Welcome back to GMA3. A showdown among lawmakers continues to unfold on Capitol Hill, with GOP House Speaker Kevin McCarthy facing a historic challenge as far-right members of his own party try to remove him from his post. Now, this after the House leader relied on Democrats to avert a government shutdown.
And joining us now is someone who knows a thing or two about government shutdowns, the senior senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. Senator, good to see you, and thanks a lot for being with us today.
But good to see you as well.
All right, Senator, Congress just avoided a shutdown on Saturday that keeps the federal government funded through November 17th. You say this is not how the country should govern, and I quote, the status quo in D.C. needs to end. How confident are you that we can avoid a shutdown?
Well, I'm confident we can avoid a shutdown. It is whether we will or not. And it's not just me that actually thinks that shutdowns need to end. The vast majority of the American people don't see this as productive. It puts us in a terrible position on the international stage when the rest of the world is watching us. It spends more money than it saves by far, puts a lot of federal workers and their families in a really tough position. And if you're some of those folks that are contractors that work for the federal government, you're out and you don't get paid at all. So this whole issue of government shutdowns has only been around since the 1980s, and we've seen both parties use it, and it's failed every single time. We need to get back to fighting about the things we need to fight about. This particular argument is on national security. It's on our place in the world and our role in foreign policy, and on a $33 trillion debt. Those are all real topics that Americans do want to see us argue about, but we shouldn't have a shutdown in the process while we're doing it.
All right, and speaking of fighting, let's talk about House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. His leadership position appears to be on the line, with members from his own party calling for him to be out of his job. Are you concerned about your party's future?
Well, I think this is one of those issues. We've got a lot of hard issues. Quite frankly, I think this is a demonstration of what's happening in much of the country right now. There's a lot of disagreement, not just in Washington, D.C., but around the country. When I talked to people about Thanksgiving last year at their house, a lot of people smile at me and say, oh, Thanksgiving didn't go very well. The cousins were fighting about random issues politically and such. We as a nation are pretty divided, and you're seeing that in political parties right now as well, the division that's out there. So we've got to set a course, and no one really seems to know what that course is, and so you have to be able to debate it out. How are we going to answer $33 trillion in debt? What are we going to do on our border for border security? What are we going to do with Ukraine? What is our position in the world? All those are practical issues, and now they've drawn into leadership, where in the House side, at least I'm not on the House side, but in the House side, they're having the argument about what direction not only are we going to go, but who's going to actually lead us in that process as well.
It sounds like there's going to be those same discussions at the Thanksgiving table as well. Thanksgiving is right around the corner. You introduced a bipartisan bill called the Prevent Government Shutdowns Act. I'm curious how that will work.
So this is actually a bill that 5 years ago, Maggie Hassan, who's a Democratic senator from New Hampshire, she and I sat down and said there's been a lot of proposals in government shutdowns. None of them have been bipartisan that have really been effective to draw a lot of people together. So we sat down and said, we all want to stop this. What's the best way to stop it? So as simple as it sounds, we started with the most basic concept. If you don't finish your classwork, you stay after class. So the way that this works is if you get to the end of the fiscal year and the 12 appropriation bills are not done, the House and the Senate are in continuous session 7 days a week. We can't travel, and we can only move to appropriation bills during that time period. It basically puts us in a spot to say you can't leave. You can't go see your family on the weekend. You can't travel and do other events and things that need to be done. You've got to be able to stay here and work on just appropriations until you get those things solved. It's the simplest way I can say it is. When my older brother and I were having arguments growing up, my mom would lock the two of us in one of our bedrooms and would say, when you guys solve this, you can come out. That's basically what this is. It holds the American people and federal workers harmless, but it puts us in a position where we've got to work until we get it done.
And Senator, you've been pushing this bill for quite some time. What are the chances of it becoming law?
So it's actually gaining a lot of steam. We have wide support among Republicans. We have a lot of support that's coming on now among Democrats. Again, Maggie Hassan, who supported this from the very beginning. We have quite a few Democrats that have publicly co-sponsored, quite a few that have stepped on and said, hey, it's time to get this to an end. This is the best solution that I've seen out there. Everyone's always going to say there's a problem and what if and what if and what if on it. The hardest thing to move in Washington, D.C. is the status quo. We all understand we don't like the status quo, but there's always the what ifs if we change away from the status quo. It's kind of the enemy you know is better than the enemy you don't. We're in a government shutdown cycle right now, and if we don't break that cycle, it's not going to get better. So We actually, I believe, have the 60 votes in the Senate at this point already. It's a matter of getting it through final committee again, which we've done in previous sessions, and actually getting it on the floor and to be able to vote and pass it and make it law. That way we can forever end government shutdowns, and then we can argue about other things that actually matter more. The topic of the shutdown, not about having a shutdown.
Oklahoma Senator James Lankford, thank you so much for being with us today.
Good to see you.
It's good to see you as well.